what I observe unfolding in Trump's systematic dismantling of NATO represents nothing less than the greatest strategic gift to Vladimir Putin in modern history, while simultaneously destroying the alliance architecture that has prevented major power conflict in Europe for over 75 years. Trump's abandonment of Article 5, collective defense, commitments, signals to Putin that American security guarantees that have anchored European stability since World War II no longer provide meaningful deterrent effect against Russian aggression. The intelligence is clear, crystal clear. Trump's NATO withdrawal strategy operates according to systematic planning that serves Russian strategic objectives more effectively than any covert influence operation that Putin could have designed himself. Every reduction in American alliance commitment, every public attack on NATO institutional legitimacy, every threat to withdraw from collective defense obligations systematically weakens European security while strengthening Putin's position for renewed territorial expansion. What troubles me most profoundly is the systematic destruction of institutional trust that enables alliance coordination and collective security. NATO's effectiveness depends fundamentally on credible American commitment to treat attacks on European allies as attacks on American territory itself. Trump's explicit rejection of this commitment eliminates the deterrent effect that has prevented Russian aggression against NATO members while encouraging Putin to test alliance resolve through limited territorial attacks. I am analyzing intelligence assessments that detail Russian strategic planning for European expansion scenarios that depend explicitly on American alliance withdrawal. Russian military planners have developed systematic capabilities for limited territorial acquisition in the Baltic states, Eastern Europe, and Scandinavia that assume American forces will not respond to attacks on European allies under Trump administration policy directives. Congressional oversight of alliance coordination mechanisms reveals systematic degradation of military interoperability, intelligence sharing, and strategic planning coordination that enables effective collective defense. American military withdrawal from NATO command structures eliminates the coordination capabilities that European forces require for effective resistance to Russian military operations, while Russian forces maintain comprehensive advantages in logistics, firepower, and strategic coordination. The economic dimensions of NATO dissolution extend beyond immediate defense spending into comprehensive economic warfare scenarios where Putin gains systematic leverage over European energy supplies, trade relationship, and financial systems that depend on American security, guarantees for stable operation. European economic integration requires security, stability. That American alliance withdrawal eliminates while enabling Putin to manipulate European economic relationships through energy, blackmail, and territorial threats. What makes Trump's NATO betrayal particularly catastrophic is the systematic coordination with Putin's long-term strategic objectives for European fragmentation and American international isolation. Putin has invested decades in strategies designed to weaken NATO alliance structures, while Trump's policies accomplish Putin's strategic objectives more completely than any Russian military or information warfare operations could achieve independently. Regional security implications for European nations reveal systematic vulnerabilities to Russian aggression that American alliance withdrawal creates immediately. Poland, the Baltic states, Romania, and other Eastern European democracies face existential threats from Russian territorial expansion that they cannot resist effectively without American military support and security guarantees. The precedent implications of NATO dissolution extend beyond European security into systematic erosion of alliance structures throughout the world that enable democratic coordination against authoritarian expansion. Asian allies, including Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the Philippines, observe American abandonment of European allies as indication that American security commitments lack reliability during political transitions and partisan policy changes. Intelligence community assessments indicate that Putin views Trump's NATO policies as optimal strategic opportunity for achieving Russian territorial objectives in Europe without major military confrontation. Russian strategic planning incorporates explicit assumptions about American moral alliance in a withdrawal while developing military capabilities for rapid territorial acquisition that exploits coordination gaps between European forces lacking American support. The technological sovereignty implications of European security collapse include systematic Chinese and Russian economic penetration of European critical infrastructure, technology, systems, and industrial capabilities that American security guarantees previously protected from authoritarian influence. European technological independence requires security stability that enables long-term investment and development without authoritarian interference or territorial threats. Democratic governance throughout Europe faces systematic pressure from Russian influence, operations, economic manipulation, and territorial threats that American alliance withdrawal enables and amplifies. Putin's strategy for European democratic destabilization operates through coordinated support for extremist political movements, economic pressure campaigns, and information warfare that American counter-influence capabilities previously mitigated through alliance coordination mechanisms. Military response scenarios for Russian territorial expansion in Europe reveal systematic inadequacy of European defense capabilities without American military support. European forces lack strategic mobility, logistics capabilities, air superiority, assets, and intelligence coordination that enable effective resistance to Russian military operations designed for rapid territorial acquisition and fait accompli strategies. The timeline implications of NATO dissolution reflect Putin's strategic planning for European expansion during optimal political windows when American alliance commitments remain uncertain. Russian military preparations for territorial operations in Europe indicate systematic readiness for exploitation of alliance coordination gaps that Trump's policies create immediately. Information warfare, coordination between Trump administration rhetoric and Russian propaganda campaigns reveals systematic alignment in narratives that portray NATO as obsolete, European allies as unreliable, and American alliance commitments as unnecessary burdens rather than strategic investments in democratic security and international stability. Counter-alliance strategies that authoritarian powers implement benefit directly from NATO dissolution, while democratic coordination mechanisms prove inadequate for addressing authoritarian expansion without American leadership and military capabilities. China and Russia coordinate systematic pressure campaigns against isolated democratic nations that lack collective security and frameworks for effective resistance. The institutional destruction implications extend beyond NATO dissolution into systematic erosion of international institutions that support democratic governance and peaceful conflict resolution, United Nations frameworks, European Union coordination mechanisms, and international law enforcement depend on American leadership and alliance coordination that Trump's policies systematically undermine. Intelligence community assessments regarding Chinese space warfare indicate systematic underestimation of threat timelines, capability development, and strategic integration with broader Chinese military planning. Space warfare represents a critical component of Chinese strategy for achieving regional military superiority while neutralizing American military intervention capability through infrastructure destruction rather than direct military confrontation that plays to American conventional warfare advantages. Recovery scenarios from NATO dissolution and European security collapse require comprehensive alliance reconstruction, military capability development, and strategic coordination that exceed reasonable recovery timelines, while authoritarian advantages become increasingly difficult to reverse through diplomatic or military means. As I conclude this analysis, I recognize that Trump's NATO betrayal represents more than policy disagreement or alliance restructuring. It represents systematic destruction of the institutional framework that has prevented major power conflict and enabled democratic prosperity for 3 generations. The decisions made about NATO alliance commitments, European security coordination, and democratic alliance structures will determine whether the post-war international order survives or collapses into authoritarian competition and territorial expansion that returns Europe to the conflictual dynamics that characterized the first half of the 20th century.